So our topic this course is prompt patterns, okay? But I do want to spend a little bit of time to talk about another very important topic for computer science, which is the design patterns. For those of you who have took the 3560 course with me, I actually spent quite a lot of time to go through the design patterns. Now, I want to borrow the same slides here to show you the idea of patterns. So what are the patterns? So why do we need the patterns? It looks very simple, but you need to understand the motivation of creating these patterns. It really helps us to solve problems. Okay, so I'm gonna go through some of these slides really quickly. Okay, these are the things actually we use for the software like object-oriented design and programming course. But the concept is the same because in that course we talk about software design patterns, and in this course we talk about prompt patterns. Okay, so this slide is pretty simple. Okay, I'll just go through this one very quickly since some of you have probably seen this before. I do want to point out one person, Dr. Shimi here from Vanderbilt University. So he is a very famous professor in the field of software engineering, and I was working with him in at Vanderbilt University before, and he has a lot of good work in concurrency programming and as well as software patterns. He had a lot of books talking about the patterns on software architecture for different type of software like networking software, concurrency, and then distributed systems. Okay, so a lot of the slides actually coming from him, and then he is also doing a lot of work right now in generative AI. I think he also recently elected as one of the a senior advisor for the White House for the government. So it's a very famous professor. But anyway, so as we talk about the design patterns, okay, software design patterns. So the motivation of learning all these patterns is to try to make everyone to become a master coder. Okay, to make your coding really good. Okay, again, this is talk about design patterns. Okay, so the question is that how do we become a master? How do we become really good? Whether it's coding or prompt or other things, right? So one point we often ask you to think about is just think about how the professionals do things, how they do things differently from the beginners. Everyone probably has your own specialty, your own hobbies. Okay, so you probably seen how professionally do things different from you if you're not a professional. Okay, sports is a very good example. Okay, and then I personally play soccer. I'm just amateur. Okay, I'm not good. Yeah, I do like play, spend a lot of time, but if whenever we got a chance to play some of the players, I do have a chance to play with some of the guys who retire. And then they were used to be the professionals, and then they're just totally different, right? Their speed, their movement, their the power, the way they shoot is quite different. Okay, so any other fields, same thing. Okay, arts, music. I was in Nashville before. Nashville is the country city town. A lot of bands and singers and guitar artists. And then a lot of people in Nashville, they play guitar, but if you see the professionals, then they do obviously differently. I heard from a friend that, the way they play it, the type of a sound, the speed, the complexity is way more than the beginners. So that obviously makes difference. So our goal here is think about any of those fields, how can we get to a level that is more professional, right? So that's the motivation. One thing we do want to remind you is that, any of these professionals, okay, so it takes efforts. Okay, so in many times we seen the professionals, the celebrities, the stars, we think their work is really good, but sometimes we tend to forget how much effort they put, right? So use Cristiano Ronaldo as an example, right? So I don't know how many of you like it, how many of you don't like it. I don't know if you're more a fan of Messi or Ronaldo, but some people don't like it because they feel this guy is a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more arrogant. However, if you look at more story about him, this guy actually is very disciplined and he works really hard. And there was one documentary talking about him practicing. He often do a lot of extra practice every day. When all the other teammates went back to rest, and he just went back to the field to practice some extra free kicks. So, it's just to show you that the top level players, people that they put efforts. Okay, so just don't forget about that. Also, the as you know train and do everything. Okay, practice and repetition is really the key. Which kind of has a similar idea as the one we talked before on the putting the hard work, right? So this guy here, there's a TED Talk. You can find this in YouTube. He's a soccer coach in Canada, for high school soccer coach, and he was talking about his way of selecting the players. He think the self-confidence is very important, but he pointed out that nobody's born with confidence, and you build the confidence by successful experiences. And part of a successful experiences is you just do the same thing repeatedly again and again, and you're gonna get it better and better. And he was talking about training a goalkeeper. Well, you just need to try to catch the ball, practice that 1,000 times a day, and then eventually you will gain those successful experiences. So building the confidence by repetition, very important. This is so important for CS major, whether it's writing code, writing prompts, or you just have to write it. Okay, that's why sometimes when you write a resume, you need to think about, okay, so we ask you to highlight the languages, program language you have, like how good you are. Now, one way is that you can say like Java, I'm expert, Python, intermediate, JavaScript beginner. That's one way to write it. A better way to write it is to say, oh, Java have 5 years experience, Python have 3 years experiences. I think a even better way to write it, some of you probably did, is that to say Java have 100,000 lines of code experience. Okay, Python have 50,000 lines of code experience. More concrete. But then the point is that for coders, for software, you just need to write the code. Okay, that's the key. And the same thing for the prompt. You just have to use and try that again and again. All right. Coaches are very important because work hard is one thing, but sometimes the coach can give you something that really saves your time and give your directions and then make it more efficient, right? So this, I don't need to give too much example. Any kind of courses you done before, when you were a kid, you probably took some of the lessons, camps. I'm sure you find some of those fun, very helpful. Okay. So here, even though these are talking about coding design, but if you later on think about a prompt, it's the same idea, right? So as we talk about software design pattern, we're trying to tell people that if you know the programming language very well, it doesn't mean that you are a good designer or you can write a code, in a very professional way. Just knowing the language is not enough. For prompt engineering, the same thing. If you know English very well, it doesn't mean that you can write good prompts. Okay, I think that's an even better example, right? So in the course, we actually show students, okay, so for example, this is a very interesting piece of code. It's written in C. So this line of code does something, and then, obviously it's very hard to understand. That's why this is a winner for this obfuscated C code competition back in 2006. So you want to write one line of code and then to print something that's pretty cool. But the code is going to be very hard to understand. So this is the winner. Okay. I don't know if you guys can guess, what this code does. I'll give you a second to take a look. And, looks like there's like a main function. It does have some code. Yeah, they have a semicolon, so they probably have, a few lines there, but they put them into a one-liner. Okay, but I don't know how many of you were in this course last semester, but if you remember, this result of the code actually is it's print out the time the program was compiled, okay, in this kind of format. So every time you run the code, it gives you different results. Okay, it's a very cool program, right? So then I was asking the students, okay, do you think this is a good design? And then everyone says no, because it's so hard to understand. So that's the point. The point is that you're very good, you know the language so well, it doesn't mean that you do good design and good architecture for the software, right? We also talk about, in software design, we have annotations, we have diagrams and designs, and then, but drawing this one is helpful, but it doesn't mean that you can eventually build good code and then build a good software. Okay. It's almost like, you're a good artist, you can draw a very beautiful house, but it doesn't mean that you can actually build a house physically. right? So same thing. You have to basically write the codes and be hands-on and then try and then repeat. Okay. So anyway, so at the end, we need to realize that a lot of this, master level, professional level, the reason they're so good because they have so much good experiences. And then the question is that how do we gain those experiences? How do we then become masters, right? So then we talk about there are normally two ways you can get this kind of knowledge. One is that you can get these designs, ideas from all this software, the code, because if you look at a lot of the existing open source project, you can probably see those good designs, good patterns, and then you can start to learn from them. It's almost like learning the natural language. You read some good books, famous, articles, and then you can probably learn how people use languages and the same idea. The other way is that you can also try to learn that from the expert. Okay, so they know what is good code, and then top coders, if you ask for the senior developers, engineers, they can tell you also how they work. They can give you the advice. Okay, but then none of this actually are the best way to learn, because if you're talking about an expert. Okay, what if you lost your expert? That actually happens very often in the companies. Okay, sometimes the senior developer left. It's actually a big loss to the team. Okay, and also the code. All right, so for the code, sometimes it's just too much overwhelming. And then best example is in Android, right? So Android is operating system, so you can actually go there to learn a lot of the good designs. But think about the Android code base. It's a very large code base. It takes forever to read all the code and understand everything. So it's not very efficient. So both these ways are not good way to learn coding or learn a good design. Okay, so we gotta need a better way that's more efficient. Okay, so without too much efforts. And the same thing here as we write a prompt. So we can always consider writing a prompt as like writing code. If you want to be really good and master, gaining all these experiences, instead of learn from experts, learn from reading a lot of examples, you probably want to have something more efficient way to do this. Okay, so that's why you will need some kind of existing patterns, the pattern that summarize how to solve some of the problems using the approach that already proves. Okay, in the class, I also provide some examples that a lot of the things that we need to follow some kind of pattern to solve the problem, right? So we're talking about, like, one of the examples we're talking about here for the trading, right? Think about if you're building a software to do the stock trading. And then I had this friend a long time ago. He graduated from PhD. He got offer from Google, but he didn't actually go to Google. He joined a startup company in New York City to do the trading, okay, to do the high frequency trading. And obviously he believes that this potentially makes more money, which is true, but at the same time, he didn't realize there's also a lot of risk. As he talked about all the development going on there, he actually mentioned one very important and very interesting fact, which is if you are going to do this high frequency trading software, you better set up your servers in New York City and as close as it is to the actual, central server. I don't know, it's NASDAQ somewhere in Wall Street, right? So you want to make sure you put your server as close to that server, because the latency is going to be lower, and it's going to help your trading algorithm. Sometimes, probably milliseconds matters for those kind of program, and they want to use the fastest language. They do a lot of C++ because it simply, runs a lot faster directly on top of the machine. So that's kind of a pattern in those specific domain. Okay, so for certain problems, you want to follow certain kind of proved solution. Okay, if someone told you that, and you just need to follow that instead of you figuring that yourself. Okay, that's called efficient, right? So with that, we talk about what is the pattern definition. So each pattern describes a problem which occurs over and over again, and then it describes a core solution to that problem in such a way that you can use the solution many times over without ever doing the same way twice. Okay, so That's how we start to introduce software pattern. So identify the problem and provide a solution. But the problem is not like a one-time thing. It normally happens many times. A lot of people need it. And then we summarize a solution that proves that already works. And then you can actually reuse that approach, reuse that solution again and again. So it helps you learning and help you to save time. Okay. So for software design pattern, last semester we're talking about this book, the design pattern book. This is a very famous book. Okay, everyone should know it, whether you took that course or not. This is the #1 most popular book in the developers' shelves. So if you go to companies, a lot of the developers, they have a lot of books on their desk, and this is the most popular one. Okay, because it's so practical. It records all these good patterns that you can follow to help you to improve your coding skills. Okay, if you didn't take the course, that's totally fine. Take a look at this book. Okay, so it talks about 23 different patterns to solve different kind of software design problems. Okay, so I'm not gonna go too much detail. For example, in software design pattern, we were talking about some pattern called observer pattern, simply telling you how you build a software structure that allows the updates process very easy to implement. So for example, again, using the stock market example, if you have a stock center server that has the prices for all the stocks, and you have a lot of clients, the clients want to use those data from the server to refresh. For example, you have a Google Finance app, you have a Yahoo Finance app, and you have your personal Google Stock app. But all of this app, they need to read the data, read updates frequently from the centralized server. And then this pattern called observer pattern tells you how can you build that structure so that you can get the updates very easily. And then you can also make it very extensible. So that's basically what the pattern tells you. Okay, so I'm not going to dive into too much detail about this one, but I give you this design, and then if you understand this design, you can follow the design to build your code, and then you can implement this much faster. Okay, so I talk a lot this design pattern. Okay, I think it's a very good analogy for most of you guys since you've been learning coding. But now if you think about ChatGPT, the way to use ChatGPT, the way to write the prompt, exactly the same idea. Okay, so basic stuff, everyone can do it, but there are often some techniques, some patterns and templates that you can follow that might give you some better results. Okay, so that's kind of the motivation why we want to do this pattern. So with that, I want to point out that for the prompt pattern, it's still a very, very new subject. It's not as hard as design pattern. Obviously, this is so much easier to understand, and you don't need to be a CS major to understand it. But it's there's some people already put this together as a kind of a series. So the most famous paper or work, I don't know if it's a book, okay, but you're gonna start seeing more and more of this one later on. But there is this paper. I want to point out that paper, this one. Okay, so this is done also by Dr. Schmidt, and then Dr. White is also pretty popular in this field, but they actually wrote this paper very early. Okay, so you see they submitted in early 2023, so very early, like only 2-3 months after the launch of ChatGPT. So this was a very early work they work on to summarize this, and then you can actually find out this paper. And I also put the paper in the slides. Okay, I'll send that later. So what this paper does is that they summarize a lot of the typical patterns that you can use, okay? And then they give you the format, the template, they give you examples, talk about the motivation of using this one, how to use this one, what are the pros and cons and the consequences you want to know. So yeah, so this paper very easy to read. It's nothing to do with math or theory or algorithms. It simply just gave you examples, okay, on the prompts. Okay, so this one was very early. I don't know if this is the most updated one, but this is definitely something I suggest you to start with. Okay, so today we can probably try to cover some of this, but again, the patterns are so much easier than design patterns. Okay, I don't really need to explain much. Just show some examples. I think you can understand it. So, but just very quick here, guys. The patterns in this paper, so they provided 1 to probably 6, 8, and 12, 16 different patterns. Okay, they put these patterns into different kind of category. For example, the audience pattern. I think we showed that one before. Where is that one? Okay, so they have a persona pattern, but there should also be an audience pattern. But for example, some of the patterns are helping you to get your output in a more customized way. Some of the patterns are help you to improve your prompts, and some of those help you to identify the errors. So they have different purposes. That's how they classify these patterns. Okay, but this is not the only way to classify this, but at least for this paper, it also follows the design pattern. When we talk about design pattern, we classify the pattern into three categories. One category the pattern to help with the creation, like create classes, methods. One of them to help with structural optimization, and the other ones are helping with the behavioral optimization. So right here, they follow the same idea to build these patterns. The reason I talk about design pattern is because if you understand design pattern, this prompt pattern, the way they present it, is exactly the same as that pattern. Okay, so that's why I think this little background is very important. Okay, so now in the paper, they describe all the pattern, how that works. So for example, let's start something like a little bit simple, which is, let's see that here, persona pattern, right? So this is very easy to understand. So when you look at a persona pattern, right? So you want to understand the intent, the motivation, and the context of using that, right? So users would like the large language model to always take certain point of view or perspective, right? So for example, it may be useful for to conduct a code review if the large language model was a security expert. So they may tell you the things from the perspectives of a security expert instead of like a regular audience, right? So that way it actually guides how the large language model generate the output, and then sometimes they can provide something like more professional. And then to use that pattern, so they give you the structure, right? So act as a persona X and provide output that persona X will create. Very simple. So we want to ask ChatGPT something, instead of just go with that question, if you use this pattern, you probably can get something more professional. Okay, let's see if they have an example. Okay, so from now on, act as a security reviewer. Pay close attention to the security details of any code that we look at. Provide outputs that the security reviewer will regarding the code. See, this is a very detailed pattern. Instead of just saying, oh, here's the code, tell me some security issues. But here you actually specify the perspective, which is like a professional security reviewers. Okay, there are a lot of professionals who do this. I work with there's one friend I have. He was in the accounting tax background, and then later on he started working on the certificates and to work on a like a security policy, like compliance, verification for large corporations. So he didn't have too much like a coding or IT background, but he does understand the IT from a higher level, like a cloud, security, data privacy, all these issues. So if you're asking him to provide you some advice on the system, so he probably can give you a lot of good information from the policy, from the government compliance, that perspective. But then if you talk to a professor who does research in cybersecurity, I'm sure the professor probably can tell you a lot more like detailed and technical things, right? So that's why this persona pattern actually really helps. Okay, so anyway, so this paper I will send to you later, and you can use this one at least the first guide to learn the patterns. But then now, since a year passed, there has been so much more things going on. A lot of other people also summarize some other patterns, and obviously this is not very difficult. You can also try to summarize and create your own pattern, which we'll also ask you to do as part of your assignments. Okay, so that's how the prompt pattern works. Any questions so far? All right. So let's actually spend some time to take a look at some of the patterns. Okay. So start from the first one. I basically put some of the notes and references here. Pretty simple. Okay, I'll share the slide, but this pattern is so much easier to learn. As you learn this pattern, okay, not only it helps you to use the pattern more effectively, but also I want you to start to think about later on as you start to build your own AI application. Okay, um, very likely you will need to integrate with ChatGPT API or some other API from Google. So a lot of the startup days, what they do is that they're not going to build their own large language model. They basically just use the ChatGPT API. But then at the end, the key technique they provided are the prompts. Okay, the prompt they use sometimes works better. And that actually becomes a secret sauce that they can integrate into their software, even though the challenging part is taken care of by ChatGPT, but still they can make a very good product. I have seen one recent startup that they work on some of the education assistance for the teachers. And then I look at the product, I can't find a website, but I look at the product, they're just doing things like generating an email sent to the students or generating some kind of announcement. Those it's basically the things the teacher may often use. Okay. And then, so obviously the backend is still ChatGPT, but they made some little dialogues that, you just type the most important information you need, and then they generate all these things you probably need to send, right? So something like that. That's a very typical startup. Now, obviously the bar to these startups is not very high. But if you make it work, it's going to be, it's going to be useful. All right. But at the end, if you could figure out some of this very secret or it's extremely effective patterns for the prompts, I think, you will have some kind of advantages. All right. So as you learn the patterns, think about later on, how can you use these patterns to build some of your own applications? Okay. So starting from persona pattern. So this one here shows you the format, act as a persona X and perform the task Y. Okay, so that way, you can get some different answers, right? So, all of this as a computer that has been the victim of cyber attack, respond to whatever I type in the output, the Linux terminal would produce, ask me for the first, command, right? Something like this. So this one, it really opens up your imagination. Okay, you can do pretty much, anything you want, right? So let's actually start to try this. All right, so go back to the pattern. So what I'm gonna do for this, okay, because this one is really easy, okay? I just need to show a couple examples. I want to show one example. As I'm doing the example, you guys need to think about your example. And in the class, I do want you to submit, okay, what you tried or what do you think could be a good example. So that way, I think it's very interesting to see all the cool things we can do with it and then to share the ideas, okay? Persona pattern. So act as I would say as a Google software engineer. Provide some effective advice to a senior computer science major college student on preparing a career in the software industry. All right, so persona pattern. So act as a persona. So you're talking this one from perspective of Google software engineer and provide advice to prepare for the jobs and careers. Okay, so if you do this, as you can imagine, they're definitely going to give you a really good answer. So let's see. So they talk about you have to have the very strong foundation, your core concepts. Okay, programming language, you need to know one of this. And work on personal project. Okay, open source projects, a very good way to show, okay, what you have learned. Version control, okay, GitHub, very practical, right? This is a very good advice. And understand software development methodology. This is more like software engineering course, like the agile development we talk about in the 4800. And then practical coding interviews. See, they know exactly what's the process of landing the job. Soft skill is important. I don't know how many of you were in my 4800 class. Last semester I didn't share that one, but now I think we were running out of time last semester. But normally I talk about something I call it non-technical skills for software engineering. So also the communication, the way to present is really important. in the maintain network, which also shared in our class, and then stay with the trend. I keep telling all of you, try to stay with the latest tools and prepare a strong resume. We actually also give you that, and then also consider internships. So see, honestly, from my point of view, I think every one of these tips is really, really effective and very concrete. It's not like this very vague or big words that but doesn't tell you anything. Every single one of these are important. Okay, I would 100% agree. Okay, honestly, I share a lot of this one, especially in the software engineering class. Pretty much the same idea, because myself, I also have the engineering background, so that's how I know most of this. All right. So if we change this one, I'm sure you can see different results, right? So act as I don't know, a good example as a, maybe from different like a perspective, okay, like a city mayor, okay, okay, like a politician, okay. Let's see if they can tell you to do leak code, right? All right. So see, they look at the intern ones, that the technology, public service, community engagement. See, these are the keywords from his or her perspective. So now you see the tips are different. Okay, engage with local tech initiatives. All right, understand impact of the technology and society. Like, or we have a course, right? Computer society. Network with company leaders, leverage public-private partnership, focus on smart city technologies. Most of the government do this, contribute to the community-oriented projects. Also, that makes sense. And understand the policy regulation, develop broad skill set, and then stay informed about local economic development and consider public sector technology careers. Okay, so see, it's totally different. Honestly, this one probably nothing useful to you guys in terms of finding a job, but you have to say that if you were the mayor, from the government point of view, these are really good feedback for CS major students in terms of career, right? See, that's how the power of the pattern, right? So you switch the variables, but if you follow the pattern, it actually give you really good and an effective answer. And these things you probably can figure out yourself, but now I'm just telling you this one, and you can start immediately use it, and which saves you quite a lot of time, because these are the patterns people already researched, already tried and proved it works. Okay, so that's the purpose of learning pattern. Okay, so this is a really example. I don't need to give you too much examples, explanations, but what I want to do now, as I mentioned, okay, I'm gonna send this Google form, guys. So everyone, please, right now, I give you 1 minute. Okay, submit example. Okay, you can try this a little bit on your ChatGPT, but then submit this form for me. Okay, so I want to see, put your name, and now we're talking about persona pattern, right? So, and then just show me the example. Tell me the prompt you used. Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes. Try to come up with something more interesting, okay, or useful. Yeah, some of the ones you guys type are pretty interesting. All right, as you guys are typing, I'm gonna share some of the ones I find interesting or useful. Okay, I'm gonna just put in the chat, okay? So one of the most important thing to do is definitely to give as much context or details as possible as you use the prompts. Yeah, this is actually a very good example on details. Right? Yeah. So, Jalila, are you gonna have an interview with next door?
Yeah, but I haven't gotten to the behavioral stage yet.
Oh, sorry. You're in the process, or you're gonna be
Yes.
okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, the behavioral round, um, it's nothing difficult. Okay, so, two tips. One is that you need to know your resume very well. Okay, a lot of time people just ask you a question based on what you put on a resume, all the projects, things you can talk about it, and then the behavioral round. Then the questions are very standard. If you Google like the top 10 most common behavioral questions, you pretty much prepare for those. Like what's your strengths, and then what's your weakness. Make sure how you know how to answer what's your weakness question. Okay, I
Okay.
don't know
Okay.
how.
No,
Yeah. I don't know how you guys will answer the what's your weakness question. Can anyone give me an answer?
I could give an answer.
Yeah, Jason, what would you say?
Uh, for me, when like someone asks me about my weakness, I tend to say I make a lot of assumptions. But I guess like my counterpoint is that like because I typically make assumptions, I'll ask a bunch of questions beforehand. But it just comes very natural to me to just make a bunch of assumptions because I don't it feels weird like bothering someone with that many questions.
Uh-huh.
And I just tend to do assumptions. But
Yeah,
then
I
yeah.
think yeah, everyone should pay attention. I think the Jason's answer is actually a good one because yeah, we agree that it might be a little too much, to ask too many questions, but at the same time, it shows that Jason is a very detailed person, maybe a perfection. Always want to get everything perfect. I always think and plan very carefully. So the point is that to answer the question for weakness, okay, you're not gonna talk about real weakness. Everyone has many weaknesses, but you don't have to say that in the interview. Okay, just don't be humble. Okay, just talk about something like this. Or another very common answer is that, oh, I'm sometimes too perfect. Okay, I just want to get everything perfect, similar to what Jason mentioned, which costs me a lot of time. So I need to probably better prioritize stuff. Okay, so just so you know that, always try to talk about the positive things, even when you try to understand and answer the weakness question. All right. Very good, guys. So, I share some examples you guys put. Okay, you got the idea. So really simple, but sometimes you want a different type of answer from the professional point of view. I think this is the pattern to think about. All right. So, all right. So to move on. All right. So next pattern, which I also showed in the early days. This is also extremely simple, but I actually find this one really useful. Okay. Explain, ask to me, assume I am a persona. Okay, I am a college student. I am a 5 years old boy, something like this. Okay, so this one is really easy to use, but super effective. I show you one example, guys. I My son is second grade right now, and then he started to do some English work. One day, he was asking me, "What does this mean?" Ecology in the in one of the reading assignment. Honestly, I kind of know what it means. I have no way to explain it. I don't know how to explain ecology. So you guys can also think about if I ask you to explain this one, how would you explain it? So what I do immediately, I just open Google and I search. This is what I find. Yeah, it's a branch of biology that deals with the relations of organisms to one another and to their physical surroundings. Now I get it. Yeah, so this is kind of what I'm thinking. But then if I'm reading this one to the second grade students, and he is not gonna get it. All right. So, and then very quickly, I just opened ChatGPT. I just asked this one again, and then I think they gave me a perfect answer, right? So this time, let's follow the pattern. Explain to me, assume I am, right? So explain to me, assuming I am a second grade student. All right. All right, so imagine ecology has it as a big adventure where we can learn how the plants, animals, and even tiny bugs live together and depend on each other in a place we call the environment. It's like finding out how everyone in the big family help each other and live together, right? So nature's family, you got a forest. In the forest, there are trees, flowers, birds, squirrels, even insects. Everyone has a job. In ecology, we learn every plant and animal has special job, like bees help flowers by spitting their pollen, and trees give clean air. And living together, share caring, helping each other, balance is important. And every one of these terms, they give very concrete, specific examples. And then you just read this one, or you let the kid to read, it's just perfect. okay, I can't imagine, you know, you gave me 1 hour to prepare for this lecture. I probably cannot come with this level, not even close. It's just not my specialty. Okay. But you know, but if you just ask in a formal way what the ecology is, then that would be the answer. So so that's called, you know, audience pattern. Okay, this is one of my favorite patterns. It works always so well. Okay, you know, sometimes I would need to say, okay, what if I explain this to a student who never learned machine learning? Okay, how do I explain to the student who had a lot of you know, experiences on mobile development, and how would they design and think about this? So persona pattern, sorry, audience pattern. Okay, so show the answer to a specific audience so that the audience can actually understand very well. Okay, so with that, you know, please send another round of answers. Same link. Okay, same link. Now this time you want to do audience pattern. That way, I can later on share the whole Excel sheet and you guys can see all the examples. Really simple. As you try these prompts, okay, just don't try the random stuff. So as I mentioned earlier, you want to later on think about if we're asking you to build the AI application, okay, so what are the problem you can solve? And how could you build a tool to help with that problem? And think about something that's probably more practical. Okay, so that way it helps you to think about the eventual application, the project. Then, you know, I like this is, I think this is from Matthew, right? So explain the concept of World War One. Assume I'm a avid Star Wars fan, right? So think about for this kind of things. If you start making it work, you can literally just make like a history app, history learning app that the user gonna choose a role or a game or some of the topic, right? And then you're gonna rewrite all the history using that kind of story. So that's a real application. You know, I can see it's very doable. Yeah, also like Jason's. Explain C++ arrays to me, assume I'm familiar with Python. So when you Google, there are always a lot of this cheat sheet that, a quick guide for Python developers to learn C++, something like that, right? So this will be a very good way and effective way to learn and generate those. All right. So yeah, both these are similar and also very simple, okay, guys, but it's obviously extremely practical. Let's actually take one more pattern. Okay, so the third one I pick from the paper is this one called flip interaction pattern. So to use this pattern, your prompt should make the following fundamental contextual statements. Okay, so I would like you to ask me questions to achieve certain tasks. And you should ask questions until the condition Y is met or achieved scope. Or optionally, you can also add ask me questions one at a time, two at a time, ask me the first question. Okay, so this pattern actually a little bit different from the other two. It actually helps to create the interaction process. Because sometimes you want to do something, but you don't know what kind of information you want to provide, even though you know the importance of providing the context information. So you can actually have, the ChatGPT to generate those questions for you based on whatever the engine needs. So this is, it helps a lot when you, again, have this something like a more vague, you don't know exactly what's the most important. How do you, get it information correct? So here's an example. I would like you to ask me questions to help me create variations of my marketing materials. You should ask questions until you have sufficient information about my current job message, audience, and goals. Ask me the first question. All right, so let's try this. Okay, I'm going to follow the pattern. I would like you to ask me questions to achieve, right? So I'm going to use, so for example, one of the things you probably, once you graduate, you work, you make money, you're going to start thinking about investment. I know a lot of you guys are doing investment, probably on stock, cryptocurrency. Okay, so, what will be a good investment plan, right? That's maybe one of the common questions. I would like you to ask me questions to help me make a good investment plan. Okay, going back to the pattern, you should ask questions until you know you should ask the question until you have enough information to generate the plan. But I don't know what you need to ask. I'm not expert on finance. All right, and ask me questions one at a time. Ask me the first question. Okay, ask me the questions one at a time. Ask first question, please. All right, let's see what happens. All right, so then start asking a question. So what's your primary financial goals? Okay, saving, buying a home, funding education, or let's just say buying a home. Okay. All right, once you graduate, you want to start think about getting your house as early as you can. So what do you plan to purchase a home? When do you plan? Okay, maybe within 2 to 3 years. How much do you have available? For example, you got a job offer, you got a good signing bonus on the salary, you got 1,100K. What's the total amount you aim to accumulate for the home purchase? That we don't know. So I can say, I plan to buy a house probably around $1 million. Okay, in California, this is getting very expensive, so 1 million is really not as big. So probably want to target that. So how much monthly annual contribution you come from making towards this investment in addition to this one? Well, that's a very detailed question. So let's say that you graduate, you got 100K job, like salary. After all of this, you probably save like 200K, 20K. Preference, looking low risk, bond saving, or you open to higher risk. I'm okay with higher risk as long as it helps the goal. See, this time is quite different, okay, because ChatGPT leading us to collect all the information. Current financial situation, do you have any offspring? No debt. Emergency fund. No emergency. Yeah, let's just say yes. Use a robo-advisor service. What does that mean? Okay. I'll do myself. No experience on investment. Oh, that's a lot of questions. Okay, let's see what do you want to ask. Would you be interested in educating yourself about this one, or do you prefer a more straightforward press automated investment? Yeah, automated. Okay. Oh, now the plan is here. So as you can see, the emergency plan. Okay, so this is a lot of financial advisor will tell you, okay, just in case something happens, you want to make sure you have enough money to live for 3 to 6 months. Just look at it every month, how much expense you have, and then times 3 or 6. An investment approach. So we want to automate it. So they're gonna suggest us to do a higher risk. So they want to do the fund and ETFs, basically those kind of agencies that they do the investment. All right, they can offer to various classes and typical manage passively. And allocation strategy for 2 to 3 years, you might consider mixed and more toward to equity stocks for potential growth. So because stocks normally has higher growth potentially, but the risk is also higher. But you want to mix that with the balanced some bonds for which is lower growth, but it's more stable. Okay. And regular contribution. So plan to have your initial 100K, and every year you should put this much, and review and adjust education, tax consideration. And anyway, so it's a lot of information, okay, but probably most important thing is probably somewhere here that you want to look at the mix of the ETF funds with some other bonds, okay, so these are probably some information, but they also did mention about emergency fund, which we didn't think about, and also how much you want to keep growing that, okay, so just one example, as you can see this time, but the difference is that it helps you to collect information if you don't know what even to ask. All right. So based on that, could everyone type me another round of answers very quick? Yeah, give it a try. It's pretty useful. Called flipped interaction pattern. So I'm going to write this down. Yeah, I started to see some pretty good and useful answers. Yeah, I'm sure you probably find this one more useful, okay, because it's it really saves a lot of details, and they can probably consider that in a more comprehensive way. Think about that Shannon's example on the careers, right? So which career I should pursue, right? That is also such a very practical issues that you can easily build up an app to help. Yeah, Brianna, you're really expert, okay, on the D&D, right? yeah, like the fitness planner, another application, you know, you could build, since I know a lot of you guys are very into fitness. All right, guys. But you know, as you can see, these things is not really difficult. Okay, so the key is you gotta try and use. Okay, as you've been using this one, don't just be satisfied with you know, using the prompt, but think about how you can turn that into a small startup. Okay, a good application. Okay, so I think the trend is that you don't have to write tons of code, doing very complicated things in order to build a startup. I think the bar will become lower and lower. Okay, so definitely be more proactive. Okay, so think about this. All right. So on Thursday we'll continue to talk about some other patterns, and we can, you know, follow the similar style like this, because most of this is pretty easy. I just want you to kind of try it, and later on we'll also ask you to try to design and come with your own patterns. Okay, so again, I want to ask again, that is like a Zoom class like this better, or you guys want to come back to the classroom? Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the feedback. Okay. But I'm actually on campus. Okay. If you want to stop by for the office hour, let me know. But yeah, I saw this probably is a little bit more efficient, the same as the mobile class. Okay. But anyway, so we'll probably still need to figure out time to meet. But before that, let's just stay with Zoom for now. All right. Good job, guys. Okay. I will see you guys on Thursday.